Hey everyone, we'll get started here in just a moment. Appreciate everyone joining. Looks like we've got 56 people, which is awesome. Cool. Given that we're already a few minutes past and we don't have a ton of time, let's get into it. So I'm super happy that you're all here. I'm Jeremy. This session is completely in service to you. I used to be an interviewer on Bain's on-campus team, have an MBA from Sloan, and I coach lots of people through Leland. And we created this event just a week ago because I've been getting a lot of messages about people with Bain interviews and other consulting interviews who want to prep, and I just wanted to offer sort of a more widespread event for people to come get the information that might be useful for them as interview season kicks off. So I'll share literally just a minute about my background. So I work for myself. I do lots of coaching through Leland. I used to work at Bain. I left that world and I do some freelancing now in addition to coaching folks just like you all. I love working with people like you who are trying to land consulting offers, and I'm here for you today to ask whatever you want. The best way that for us to do this will be for you to put your questions in the chat, and I will take the ones that are broadly applicable and answer them in sort of rapid succession. Uh, if anything really meaningful is coming up, feel free to raise your hand, and I will try to call on you in person, but use the chat. And then otherwise, I'm here for you. You can find me on Leland with this profile. Message me any other questions that come up. And if you want to work in any capacity, we can chat about that through there too. So with that said, I can answer lots of different types of things. So if you have questions, feel free to just start throwing them out there and we can get right into it. How to practice the interview as an engineering student. So I'm going to use this to answer just a more general question about how to practice the interview in general. Um, and as I said, feel free to let me know what's useful to chat about in the chat. Keep the questions rolling. The way that I coach everybody that I work with is through action and practice. I don't lecture on how to case. Um, but I do give practice cases every time I meet with people. I think that the best way to learn how to interview well for consulting is to do a lot of practice and not to read endlessly about what good frameworks are or what a good case looks like, but to work with a quality coach and do lots of practice with friends. So it's not different as an engineer as it is for anyone else. Casing and behavioral, how to prepare and ace both areas. So the case interview is the harder part to prepare for most people. It's something that no people have generally not done in the past. It takes a longer time to understand all the different types of cases and to get enough practice to deliver an answer seamlessly. That's why I suggest starting the case interview prep before the behavioral prep. You can likely just sort of do the behavioral prep in the weeks and months right before the interview because it's a lot simpler. A lot of people will have to figure out how to tell their story effectively, but the case is definitely a skill that requires more time to get up and get ramped up on. What are the best questions to ask in an interview? I will answer this one very quickly. So the best questions to ask in an interview are ones that are personal to the interviewer. A lot of people ask questions like that can easily be found online, but the one way that you can automatically ask a good question is to ask something about their experience because you couldn't have known it before, and people love talking about themselves. So it can be something like, why did you join this company in the first place? What's kept you in this group? Why did you make a transition from X to Y? Something like that. Typically, how should one go about practicing cases if they are planning to do it alone? It's a hard endeavor. I can send you case books if you want that have lots of cases in them. So if you want those, just message me through the platform. And your best bet would be I could also share this case playbook that I made that I use with the people I work with. Um, is to talk things out loud and go through a number of practice cases and basically try to narrate the case yourself. So what could be useful is watching a few practice cases on Leland Plus and then trying to go through some on your own in those case books. So that's that one. How to pivot from a tech focused role into consulting and how do consulting firms look at it. not lateral hiring, industry hiring is a tricky one, and I'm not all that familiar with it. If you're coming from tech, I'm guessing you're talking about coming from a full-time tech role into consulting versus maybe a tech internship. Uh, Message me offline about this one. I'm generally not the best person to answer the questions about these lateral and industry hires, though. Bain, big companies often want to see the interest in consulting. How do you show this interest if your background did not contain consulting internships? If you're interviewing as a junior trying to get the internship for your junior summer, you do not need to have extensive consulting experience. The consulting firms know that it is not likely that anybody can land a major consulting internship before that summer. But there should be things on the resume that indicate some interest that has been sort of coming online through your college career. The way that can look is like case competitions, different clubs that you've been in, different projects you've worked on, different internships you've had that maybe you've done some consulting adjacent work. And so as long as those things are coming through in the resume, there's no pressure to have consulting internships before then. The interest can be demonstrated in a number of ways. And what's more important in that stage is your GPA. That's like critical thing they're looking at in terms of giving an interview. So making sure the grades are good and also crafting a very solid resume that even if the experiences are not consulting exactly, talk about them in a light that looks similar to what a consultant would be doing. Okay. Incoming MBA student have a couple months before the course kicks off. Just getting started with casing prep. First steps that I should definitely check. Yeah, I mean, I'll answer this one quickly because I answered a similar one in the beginning, but I would get as many reps as you can with coaches and friends. Getting reps is really the name of the game here, and getting solid feedback is important. And people on Leland can do that for you, or someone who got the internship offer or full-time offer at your school, or somebody at one of the companies, and then getting reps outside of that. I'm not going to get into super specifics about casing on this question because it doesn't seem like that's what's being asked. How long does it take to hear back about whether or not someone receives an interview? Yeah, so in terms of getting the interview, you should be here back within like 2 to 3 weeks. Varies a lot by the company and the round, but if you haven't heard by like a month, I think it's safe to say that you probably wouldn't get interviewed if it's one of the top firms. That's really all I know about that. It also will differ if you're at a target school or not. I'll just share that if your school is explicitly being looked at by a team for the company, or if you're just sending an app into sort of a very general pool of non-targets. Master's student at Charles Booth applied for ACI. Okay. This does not make sense to me. If you're at Charles, I think CBS is Charles Business. Charles is Booth. Oh, Columbia Business School. Yeah, please confirm in the chat. Just comment on that if you're an undergrad or not, because if you're not an undergrad, the ACI will not be the right position for you. How do you know when your
Uh,
casing is up to par? Um,
uh,
your your casing is up
uh,
to par. Excuse me, I'm hearing an
I,
echo. Yeah,
yeah, I posted that question. I'm a
yeah.
master's student at Columbia Business School.
Yeah, so you won't be applying for an ACI role. You're looking more at a summer associate role. So I'll just say that and message me offline if there's anything, because that's a very specific thing. How do you know when your casing skills are up to par? Your casing skills are up to par when you're getting very positive feedback and able to tackle a wide variety of cases. A lot of things that can sort of happen are people get very pigeonholed into only knowing how to tackle certain types of cases. But the way that I try to work with people is I don't have them memorize frameworks, first of all, because I want their approach to be very flexible. I could ask them a case about profitability, but I could also say, hey, this highlighter isn't working well. How should I fix it? And they can answer that just as flexibly and logically as they could a case they've seen before. And you can only get that through a wide variety of practice, basically. Um, okay. In terms of the math, how would you drill down to get better on the math? There's nothing specific you need to know about Bain to stand out that you would not do at another company. My philosophy is that all the case interviews test for basically the same thing. They all look a little bit different, but they're all the same skills. So when I work with people, even though I worked at Bain and I have the most intimate experience with the Bain case, I prepare people in the same way because whether the interviewer's leading it, whether you're leading it, whether it's about one thing or another, it's the same set of skills. It's about being proactive, organized in your thinking, strong communicator, not panicking if there's something that goes wrong, being able to do math. It's the same stuff. In terms of improving at the math, yeah, I don't know a ton about this. Honestly, rocket blocks is a thing people do tend to use. Um, honestly, like my general point of view is that if your math skills are below a certain level, it is very hard to get them up above it. Like if they're very low, but most people are in sort of a middling range where with some practice they can start to do the interview math very easily. So it's very likely that you're one of those people where it's not like an existential problem. Um, Best structure for cover letters. Here's my 2-second answer on this. I don't think any companies are reading these anymore because everyone's using generative AI, and I would not worry about having a masterful cover letter because it's very likely that no one's going to read it. Tech advisory at Big Four into strategy. Is it possible? Yeah, this is more of a lateral transfer thing. So message me and I'll try to put you in touch with someone that can answer it, but I'm not the best at this. I will name out that in the last few years, as hiring has slowed for some of these bigger firms, I don't think that they're lateral hiring as much as they used to. I'll just say that. Um, what's a make it or break it in an interview with Bain? Can you clarify in the comment what you mean by that, please, Layden? What's a good GPA? When I was working at Bain, which is a couple years ago, a 3.5 or better was generally considered good enough. I don't know if grade inflation is changing that, but when I'm working with people, if they have above a 3.5, I'm like, the GPA is not going to be a problem. Who Someone wants to switch into consulting from engineering. Okay, I think I mentioned that already. I would just talk to people in the industry and make sure it's something you want to do. Something I talk about a lot with people who are thinking of working with me is I just want to make sure they actually want to do this job. Like it's very, people are often just like allured by, the money or the prestige or the name, but it's a hard job and it's not for everyone. So if you're in engineering and thinking about consulting, I would just talk to people and understand if it's something you actually want to do. And then if you do, message me and I can help you find the next steps from there. What office I was in, I worked in Dallas for 3 years and Boston for one. Um, Big critique that I keep receiving is my answers sound memorized. How do I sound prepared but not memorized? That is such a good question. That is why I don't work with sort of pre-formatted frameworks. What I've noticed in a lot of people's prep process, at least when I work with them, is that they start off very naive and they have all these, kind of creative answers. Then they get very pigeonholed and they look at frameworks, they start to memorize stuff, and then every case I give them, they start to give the same, like, I want to look at the market, the customers, and I'm like, no, stop. Like those are not those are just totally memorized and they're not customized. So then I start pushing people back towards this very simple idea of just answering the question. If I tell you, okay, this highlighter company is not making money anymore, what would you do? You wouldn't be like, I'd look at the market, I would look at the profit, I would look at you would just say, I'd want to understand if the revenues have gone down or if their costs have gone up. I mean, it's a very simple thing. And I try to get people away from this notion that they have to spit out this like whole, like perfect web of pre-formatted stuff. What makes Bain interviews different from McKinsey and BCG? Yeah, they're all unique in their own way, as I said, but they're at the core, it's the same skills. At a very high level, the Bain interview is known for being interviewee led, meaning that you have control of it and I will follow along. The McKinsey interview is known for being much more interviewer led and question based. So it's very explicit, like number one, two, three are the things we're going to get into today. BCG, there tend to be a little bit, from what I know, like some more exhibits. It can be a little bit more math heavy. Um, but again, slight differences. All of them have exhibits, all of them have math. So I wouldn't get bogged down in the specifics. MBA student met with someone in Chicago interested in working weekly to learn about consulting. Is there any particular I should just learn? I don't understand that question, Eric. Can you please reframe it for me? Okay,
Yeah.
another question.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Yeah, what's up, Eric? Yeah.
Yeah. So my question pretty much, so I met with someone he just started being a consultant in
Yeah.
January of this year, and he was an intern prior to getting hired into the company. So with me doing the consultant boot camp through Leyland, I was gonna try to schedule time with him like on Thursdays, just to kind of like get maybe like small projects or kind of like get hands-on experience to kind of, I don't know if that's something I would be able to do. So I want to try to like build a relationship and rapport with him so that way I could be able to try to get into
Yeah,
consulting.
Eric. So
That
let me answer this real quick because it doesn't seem like it's going to be the most relevant for everyone. So message me if I miss anything in this answer, and I'll finish up the answer over the chat
okay.
through Leland. But what I would say is your best bet is building relationships where the person that you're building a relationship at the company with can eventually write a recommendation letter to recruiting about why
Okay.
you should get an interview. There are two steps to the process. There's getting the interview and getting the offer once you ha have the interview. So acing the interview. Getting the interview is very dependent on the resume and the people at the company who know you who can vouch for you. So I would do everything in your power to build a long-term relationship that ends with the person being able to recommend you. Okay,
Okay.
another question here. For potential experienced hires at Bain, is there optimal recruiting period? Hannah, I do not know the answer to this. I am not the expert on lateral hiring and industry hiring, so message me and I can try to find someone at Leland to better answer this. Thoughts on using AI to practice cases? Yeah, go for it. I mean, no downside to trying. I mean, I don't think that it will be nearly as helpful as meeting with coaches or with fellow students, but if you're on your own and looking for, a little bit more practice, try it. I'm really curious what you'd be using it for. Because it probably doesn't know the specifics of what's being looked for in a case interview. Good websites to practice the tests. I don't know. I don't do a ton of online casework. I generally recommend people get in-person practice with me and people that can also give them practice cases. How important are references? Uh, I have not heard of Bain asking for references, so I think the answer is not important. It's important to have a strong CV than cover letter. Yeah, as I said, Mauricio, I don't think cover letters really matter much anymore, but don't take my word for this. I don't want to be be the one who messes up your process. I help people with cover letters. Writing is something that I can do very well, but I don't put a lot of weight in them as I don't think they're being read generally, and some companies are not even asking for them anymore. So that's what I'll say for there. What makes okay specific section of the case where maybe your client readiness helps you ace it? Yeah, Layden. Yeah, this question is like too general almost for me to answer it in a useful way. There's so many skills that go into casing. Would be better for us to just maybe chat for a few minutes or message me online. We can talk about that one. Did you recruit for other firms or just Bain? If so, how did your experiences differ? Yeah, I recruited for a handful of different firms. Bain was like my dream job, and I only wanted to get Bain. So once I got it, I stopped interviewing anywhere. Um, I also had an offer from IBM, and I think I had one from ZS Associates, which is another consulting firm. Both were consulting. Um, Bain always felt different than these companies. Bain felt more personal, and it felt like a place where people would really care about me. It felt, even though it's a big company, it felt small somehow, and I could really feel that. And it's really the only company that I actually wanted to do consulting at, to be honest. Not that the other companies are bad. Um, D, best time to start applying for summer internships when the apps are posted. If you started your MBA today, it's likely the apps are out now or will be out very shortly. So make sure you apply by the deadline, and there you go. How much of my advice would apply outside the US and would apply in the EU? All of it. I mean, the standards are global. They're doing the same type of interviews everywhere. So everything I say today generally applies from an interviewing standpoint. Do's and don'ts for cold messaging on LinkedIn. Yeah, feel free to do it. You'll probably have to send a lot of messages to get answers, and your better way here will be to go through people you know. If you know someone in an office, I would go directly through them and get them to connect you to other people, because I think a lot of people are getting inundated with messages today. I would also focus on reaching out to people who you have something in common with. It'll give them more of a reason to respond to you. Yes, Marielle. Bain does have an assessment before the interview. From what I hear, it's the first year they're using it, so I actually don't really think it carries much, if any, weight right now. They might just be testing it out to see if there's a correlation between the people they're hiring and the tests. So with these tests, there's not really a good way to practice them. They're sort of just logic puzzles, so a good night of sleep will be the best bet for you there. Is there a specific re section of the case for maybe a specific client readiness? No, it's a little bit too general, Layden. The answering this question, I just don't think will be very helpful. The whole thing has to be done comprehensively well in their eyes for you to get an offer. So it's really the whole thing. Not a question for Germany, but is anyone open to practicing cases with me? Yeah, it's a great question, Kamal. Yeah, hopefully you guys can find some case partners. And if you need a case partner, message me and I can see if anyone else on the Leland platform or any of my clients can use someone to practice with. Recommendations for behavioral interviews, such as how to improve storytelling. Yeah, this one just takes a lot of practice, sort of similar to casing. Um, I usually, there are a few questions I focus on above all the others with the people I work with. It's who are you slash walk me through your resume slash tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work at this company and why do you want to go into consulting? So I really make sure that people have defined answers to those going into any interview. And then in terms of storytelling, I think, you'll have to tell the most stories in the context of um, behavioral questions that are like, tell me about a time when you led a team, or tell me about a time where you failed. So it's generally good to have a bank of these questions that you can rely on, not questions, answers and stories that you can rely on as you get them in interviews. So I'll help people pre-map those out. I also just throw a lot of practice at people, and as they answer those questions, the stories start to form. Does Bain have assessments before interviews? I answered that one. Not a question. Yeah, answered that one too. Okay. Can I apply for roles in BCG in the USA and other roles in Europe at the same time? From my understanding, at least the way we did it at Bain is you can only apply to one office of these companies. You can't apply to like many different offices. Um, so I would just choose the office slash region you want to work in and just target that. Undergrad, I went to Wash U in St. Louis. Appreciate the question, Sarah. What was my answer to why consulting? Gosh, that was a while ago. I'll do my best, and I'll come back to this question, Alyssa, in just a moment. Um, my answer to why consulting, I don't remember what my answer was, but when I work with people, we're trying to make the answer as like less as little generic, making it as the least amount of generic as possible and more specific and personal that we can. Um, so I have people draw on their experiences. What's often helpful is if somebody's done an experience that either is consulting or similar to consulting, um, and they can then talk about that and point out exactly what they liked about it and what they didn't, and then use it as a reason that they want to keep going further in the path. So something like that. So for me, it was probably that I like did investment banking, but hated I mean, didn't say this, but don't want to go back into that. But there were a number of things within that job that I really vibed with that I know that consulting is mostly made of. And then I just leaned on that most likely. All right, let's see. Alyssa, where was that question? How many cases on average do we need to practice to feel comfortable for real interviews? This is a good question. Where can we connect with you if we would like to ask further questions, if that is possible? Yeah, so my Leland profile is here. I'm just going to repost that. So you can, uh-oh, come on, just a sec. I'm going to post this here. Uh, and what I will say, I'll post my profile here in a second. What I can say is anywhere between like 30 and 50 cases is definitely enough. I mean, I've seen people get offers doing like 5 of them, but most people, it takes longer time to ramp up and understand different types of cases, that the flow of them, how to deliver. Um, so what I would say is you could definitely plan on doing at least at least 15 to 20, probably around double that. Let me just see if I can get this thing. Just one moment here. I'm gonna post my profile. Okay, got it. So that's my profile. That's where you can message me or send other questions. Tell us about the most compelling candidate you've ever interviewed. Any interesting stories from when you were on the other side of the process? Yeah, the main interesting thing that I have to share is that 80% of people, from my estimate, would screw up on some very easy math. And so a lot of my focus with people is not on getting them to be some sort of math whiz. Like we're not going to be able to do that anyway. It's about getting them to go slow enough to actually get the math they do correct, because believe it or not, it can be a way to stand out in a world where almost everybody's going too fast and making easy mistakes. So that's me from direct experience. I never knew that before. The candidates that stand out are very personable and energized about the job. You can feel it in their voice. I just had a candidate who I worked with for around 5 months who got the Bain internship, and he's an undergrad, and he was the most enthusiastic person I've ever worked with. And I was just telling him, like, bring this enthusiasm to the interview because they will feel it. And they did. So that's what I would say, is that they're good at casing, but they also like really want the freaking job. Any general differences you could and would be comfortable sharing that make Bain unique? Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Hannah. Definitely talk to people at these firms currently. My take on it is that they're very different. As I said, Bain was the one that I had a strong preference for over all of the others. You're gonna find different people at them, and part of what they're looking for in the interviews is not just that a person can do the case, but that they're going to be a fit at the firm. People at Bain tend to be a little bit more, there's more of a culture of, let's say, uh, fun and humility, maybe, rather than like a focus on prestige or um, something like that. Not that to put the other firms down, but the people at Bain are generally known for being like, mixing work and fun a little bit more than at the other firms, while at the same time being very sort of answer focused, um, which is sort of Bain's like DNA. Uh, okay. Is there a degree from an M7 business school? Will that give you an edge? What about Boston University? Yeah. Can you confirm for me, Elio, are you talking about undergrad or graduate? Sarah, what do you look for in consulting clients through Leland? What would make someone a good fit for working with you? Yeah, I love working with people of all different kinds. I would say there are two different types of people that I work with. There are the people who come to me now, sometime, now or like last month, last minute for interviews they have like now. Those people are like, hey, I want to do like 3 or 5 sessions to just whip into shape. And so for those people, I'm super happy to support them. For the people I'm working with longer term, like these are people I'll work with like for like 4 or 5 months on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to get them ready. We have much more time to do the prep. Um, I'm looking for people who are definitely want to go into this job and are willing to put in the work to prepare. Um, I will not work with someone if I don't think they have a chance of getting in, because it's just a waste of both of our times. So I'll look for people with decent GPA, a decent resume, um, and a real desire to actually learn how to do this case thing, because it takes a lot of time and practice, and it's not just something that comes to you. And the best candidates, as I said, will bring both that rigor and that enthusiasm for the job. Um, Given the slowdown, what do you still recommend trying to get into consulting? It's a very hard question, Zakaria, honestly. I try to answer it as honestly as I can. It's hard to get into an MBB. I think it's definitely possible, and that I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't. But it's harder than it was a few years ago. I think people should just expand the reach a little bit more. Like when I case prep people, the prep we do is not just useful for MBBs, but for tons of different types of consulting interviews, healthcare consulting, tech consulting, um, the big four accounting firms that do consulting. So I just have people expand their searches a bit more, and I think without it makes it much more feasible to get in. How do I evaluate cultural fit? Yeah, a lot of what we would look for in interviews was like coachability. If someone was like sort of humble and willing to take feedback, that's one thing. And then a lot of it will come through in like just the chatter you have with the interviewer, both before and after, and in behavioral interviews about whether they think you'll vibe with the firm. So it's sort of like a feel thing, but it comes down to like this coachability element and whether they could see themselves working on a team with you. And very welcome, Hannah. I appreciate your calling out that in the chat. Areas of expertise when you're interviewing for consulting? Nope. You do not need to have any areas of expertise for these interviews at all. They're specifically made for it so that anybody can do them well, even without specific like niche knowledge. What would I be doing or have done if I wasn't doing consulting? I sort of eliminated the finance route because I did an internship that I didn't like. And then I decided I wanted to go to Bain, and that luckily that happened. If I wasn't doing consulting, I probably would have gone to a startup and done some sort of like operations or strategy role. I have a particular profile. I had a life situation, went back to studying in the late 20s, now in 30s. How would such a profile be received at an MBB? Negatively, positively, don't care. It's a good question, Quentin. I do not know a great answer for it, to be honest. It's not something I dealt with a lot, so I don't want to misguide you here. What about the operations part? How does the interviews go? What do you mean by that, Nina? Please just confirm in the chat. We're coming up on time, everyone, so I'm just gonna finish these slides. If you're still here and want to book time with me, definitely feel free to book a free intro call or book a session or a package on my profile. You can do that here on the right, or as I said in my profile, I posted it in the chat. I'll do that again here. You can find me there. Discount off my first session, Jeremy-Sharf-25 will give you 25% off this week for that for a session. So if you're interested, definitely feel free to go to my profile or reach out and we can chat more. Yes, a couple more questions and then we will hop. Is having an MBA degree from an M7 business, will that give me an edge in the application? Yeah, where you go to school will determine a lot about whether or not you will get an interview with these firms. M7 will help because they will be a target campus for a certain office of the consulting firm, whereas some other less known schools might not be targets, makes it much harder to get an offer. So I really appreciate everyone being here. We had a really big group, a lot of great questions. I'm happy that I could get through these for you. If anything else comes up, please feel free to message me on Leland and we can pick up the conversation there. But hope everyone has a great evening. Excited to hear from you all soon and wishing you all the best. See ya. I'll hang on for a couple minutes if anyone wants to just chat like conversationally for a few minutes. Just I'll hang on till like 40 after the hour.
So I was stalking you on LinkedIn and I noticed that you were a ball boy for the US
Yeah.
Open.
Yeah.
Did you play tennis in college?
I didn't play varsity, but I was sort of like one of the better like recreational players. So I played a lot, but just not on the varsity team.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Do you play or did you play?
Getting into it right now,
Nice.
but love
It's a
watching
great sport.
tennis. Also another question. So I know you've done a lot of freelance consulting. How's
Yeah.
the market for that?
Yeah, I mean, I found that it like a lot of it depends on the network that a person has. I got a lot of my work through like warm leads. I just since I've been at Bain, at MIT, at WashU, I've just accrued like a huge network of people who I can call like mentors, friends, and colleagues. And so it was doable for me. I think the market making platforms like, Catalan or Move Me On or whatever, they're just hard because they're so competitive now.
Mm.
Any other questions out there from anyone? All right, everyone. Appreciate you all joining.
I got a question.
Oh, yeah. What's up, Trevor?
Yes, thank you. What if you've been working for a while and you want to get back to school, and somehow you've taken courses, happen to take courses while you worked, what's the pathway towards getting into a consulting firm?
Yeah, I'll answer this really quickly before hopping off. I'm not the best person to answer these like unusual situation questions. I just don't know the answer. My best guess is there are basically two standard paths into consulting, which are like after MBA and after undergrad. Everything else is less standard. So if you're in one of those less standard buckets, I would just talk to someone who's gone on that path before you. That's my main piece of advice.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you. And hope you all have a great day.